So the thing that's always fascinated me about people is that people are incredibly creative, even if they don't think they are, and that the stories that they tell about themselves, their families, their communities and the world, I've always been fascinated about the creativity of people and how they tell their stories in different ways. And of course, as we know, stories change the world incredibly, like you were mentioning the Star Wars, so movies but our personal stories, our community stories, our world stories, and many of the indigenous stories, like in Australia, the Aboriginal stories, or in Tibet, which are all passed down verbally. They weren't written down, so they were verbal stories passed on. And the whole thing about how the world and what we call the world channel comes through individuals and groups, and the stories are told.
And it's interesting with stories because when I was teaching, I realized that the only time where children in general are very, very quiet, you don't need to discipline the classroom, you don't need to do anything, it's when you tell a story. Either you make up a story, because you saw something happened in the playground and you think, okay, well, how about I talk about the story of a whale and a shark, something like that, and then in fact it's about what happened on the playground, but it's a metaphor. But children are completely fascinated.
Not just children.
No.
And of fairy stories and how we tell stories to young children. But we were talking a little before about Charlie Chaplin, and so I wanted to ask you how you perceive and to show us how you see Charlie Chaplin relating to and interacting with other people in the world.
Well,
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, he was like in the 20th century. He was probably one of the most famous people in the world. Everybody wanted to meet Charlie Chaplin, from powerful people, business people, politicians, everybody, musicians. Everybody wanted to meet him and spend time with him.
Because
I think because of the impact that he had in the world, playing this, because he was really able to define fundamental elements in clowning or in comedy, which is, first of all, you need to have an environment. So his environment was very social, because his character was always facing different obstacles in daily life. Either not having any money and finding, how can I eat? Well, I see that there's an ad somewhere that says boxers are wanted. So even though I have no skills, I cannot box. How can I manage to survive in the ring with a real boxer and earn a living so I can eat something? So, and I think it really spoke to a lot of people, because Charles Chaplin was all about ordinary people, not just anybody. He was not doing something to please people that had any sense of power or any social status. He was just doing it for everyone.
So when you say that, it makes me think that in what we call rank and hierarchy in process psychology, from the point of view of the ordinary world, the consensus reality mainstream world, as we call that level, he was very low rank, because he had no money, he didn't have qualifications, he wasn't in a job, and yet internally I would say he had a lot of high rank inside of himself, because really he was able not only to survive in that role, but he was also funny.
Exactly.
And he got work and he got jobs, and because he somehow, how did he relate to people that he got those jobs?
But what's interesting is that for the others, I mean, in clowning, usually what creates something funny between two characters is when one is really identified with a position or a status, and the other one is not
high status.
High status, for example, or a form of authority. And the other one, the clown, destructures everything, changes all the formats, all the standards, all the references are completely kind of put in a big washing machine and completely transformed. So there's the reaction is like the people who kind of hold on to a structure, to a form, that it's always like this, then they think, wow, no, you can't change that, and they become more and more angry and frustrated, and then of course it becomes funnier for us to observe how human beings hold on to things.
Yes, and then the clown actually sees through the form, and then amplifies it, so we by detachment a little bit, and then the clown does that, or the comedy does that, and then that allows us to see more clearly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And one more question, because you named your business Chasing Chaplin. Is there something really personal that you connected with Charlie Chaplin, that you chose that as your business?
Excuse me. Yeah, I think so. I think what happened is that I felt that there was, in fact, at the end of his life, Chaplin said, the only thing I've been in my life is a clown. I'm nothing more than a clown. So even though he had the fame and money and everything, in his heart, that's really the message, was a human a message of how to become really human.